Hi there. Welcome. I'm Bob Thompson, and I'd like to welcome you to the Philanthropic Planner program. If you've seen us before, you understand the purpose of the program is to talk about philanthropy, the importance of philanthropy to the local community and to the state, country, and globally. We want to simplify the process of philanthropy, talking about non-legalese approach. We want to have a friendly forum to discuss with our friends, neighbors, family about the boring subject of philanthropy. But what we want to emphasize is the importance of philanthropy to our community and how it impacts both financially and the nonprofit sector, of course. Today, we want to talk about numbers. I hate to get into numbers, but honestly, this is like tax season. And when you're watching this, we're getting ready for the holidays and everything. It is not tax season. But the end of the year, we're talking about lame duck, we're talking about Congress, we're talking about capital gains and taxes, both locally in the state and federal. It's just numbers. And in all of the years of financial planning practice, our practice internally, we're numbers people. But externally, when we're talking to clients in the past, don't tell me, just tell me what I have to do, where I have to go, and what do I have to write, and so on. Today, we're more attuned with numbers. So the title of our program today is Do the Math. Do the Math. And the subtitle is How big is your calculator? Now, we talk about math all the time, and we talk about calculation. We talk about the time value of money. Certainly, we're talking about taxes and regulation and laws and that kind of thing. That goes hand in hand with our planning. But how does that fit in with philanthropy? Well, you've heard us talk about capacity, and with capacity, the greater the capacity, the greater probability that we have money to gift, perhaps. But philanthropy comes in a lot of different ways. Certainly, volunteering is a big part, and we've got numbers for you. And on the volunteer side, last year, for example, there were 63, almost 64 million people participated in some form of volunteering. Now that's across the board. That could be coaching a little league or the Girl Scouts or what have you, but volunteering for a nonprofit organization. Now if we quantified the number of hours, and those hours are tens of millions of hours, and we tied that into even minimum wage. But if we looked at the median, the average cost, any way you look at that, and we take and quantify the number of hours that these volunteers, 64 million, the impact of the nonprofit sector is so vast. And we take it for granted. We really take it for granted. If we look at the numbers of employees that work for nonprofits, we're talking about 13 million people, 13 and a half, almost 14 million people. That's 11% of the nation's workforce. So I've got to share with you, this last election and all of the campaigning and back and forth between the parties and candidates and so on. You know, I really didn't hear much about the nonprofit charitable sector. You know, back in, I believe, 1975, John Filer Commission, John Filer of Aetna fame, that commission came with the three sectors of our society: the public, the private, and the independent, the charitable area. Well, there was nothing new. It's just that Filer's commission put it in and defined it better, the three sectors. Now, if we went back to John D. Rockefeller talked about the importance of charity, and back then the big wealth, the ultra wealth of the country, the Carnegies and Rockefellers and so on, they knew that private or that independent charitable sector was vital to the country. So we want to talk about the math, do the math, and we want to talk about how big is your calculator. I brought this calculator from the office, so forgive me, it just fit in with our program. First, let's start off with a little bit of local news. You know, the last program, I was going to talk about the Red Wagon Brigade in West Hartford, the Morley Elementary School for years and years, I think 19 or 20 years. A second grade teacher started the Red Wagon Brigade, and every year children K through second grade, I believe, 75, 80, 90 red wagons would collect cans and non-perishable food and gift that to the West Hartford Food Bank. This year it was postponed once because of rain and storm, postponed a second time because of a storm, and then canceled. Well, this was catastrophe to the young children and the parents and the teachers and the town, that here's a tradition that the kids have looked forward to, and they changed it a little bit this year because after it was postponed, everybody rallied together and they collected the non-perishable food, and they delivered it on 3 flatbed trucks. And the kids this year can say the Red Wagon Brigade still accomplished their mission of 5,000 to 6,000 items of non-perishable goods. I thought I'd mention the Red Wagon Brigade because of the problems that they went through and the postponement and so on. Another a couple of articles. I've got to refer again to abuse. When we look at elder abuse, and it comes from different angles, and the reason this is important in the philanthropic sense is that if we have scams, if we have even family members under the cloak that, oh, mom or grandmom or whatever, we're gifting this money away, and that money really isn't gifted to charity, it somehow finds its home in someone's pocket. But unfortunately, we see abuse a lot in the press, and I've talked before about scams. We just have to be very diligent in protecting our assets and our identity from identity theft. So be cautious, and this really fits into our recent storm, superstorm now they're calling, Superstorm Sandy, that hit the Atlantic coast, New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut, and some of the scam artists that are coming out of that. And along with the scam artists are either legit, very, very good charities. The Red Cross and Salvation Army come to mind, but other charities that really serve a purpose and get gifts from you and me and our neighbors and friends. But then we have other people under the cloak of we are a nonprofit, and they have similar names to the recognizable charities. So be cautious in how you gift your money. Do some research, get on the internet, call some people, but be careful in how you're gifting money. We want your gift to go where it's intended to go. And you know, in the publications that we see in addition to the Chronicle, and I kind of bore you to death with opening a program with the Chronicle of Philanthropy, but other publications, and it just seems like right now we're seeing a lot of publications that have articles that are devoted to gifting, year-end, holiday gifting, and here in the current Money magazine, we have an article in there about be careful in diluting your gift. Now here are the numbers again. And when we do the numbers and when we get to the calculators and we say, okay, are my dollars going where they're intended? I want to, for example, learn from some of the expense. We talk about cost, but in this Money Magazine article, we talk about diluting your gift. And the sense there is the Indiana University Center on Philanthropy in a nationwide study and survey that a gift, to process a gift, costs $15. An average, certainly that differs with different organizations, but if we use that figure of $15 per item, and I have, and we experience firsthand in our firm, some very gracious people that want to gift to everybody. And the numbers, you could have 20, 30, 40 different small gifts, $10, $15, $20, and so on. Well, if it takes $15 of cost to process a gift of $20, $25, then the remaining $5 or $10 really ends up going to the mission, but most of the cost was administrative and in processing and new business development and that kind of thing. So if I have $1,000 to gift, and now is the season that we look at this, and I have 20 different charities that I want to gift $50 to. 20 charities, $50 each. Now, if it's $15 per gift, then out of my $1,000, only $700 after that $15 times 20 gifts, $300. I have $300 that has diluted my $1,000 gift. If we, on the other hand, have 10 gifts of $100 each, I'm only gifting to 10 charities now, but there's $150, so only $850 ended up with my charities. Now, if I have two $500 gifts, that's only $30. So $970 out of my $1,000 ended up going to charity. So think about your gift. Think about whether well-intended $5, $10, $20 gifts to charities. I've always gifted to this charity. And as soon as I gift to them, they mail me back and they want a little more and a little more. Well, my dollars did not go where I wanted them to. Now, also in the same vein, think about telethons. We have situations where, and we talked about this a couple years ago, where in the newspaper we read about police union contracting with a firm, and all they did was have a bank of people calling for a program or what have you with for supporting the police union. Well, go back to my $1,000. If they called a number of people and they received $1,000, the police union only got $10. In another case, $100. So 90% and more in some cases, and I know that's the extreme, but it's important to talk about how much money ended up going where it was intended. We have other examples of that, but keep in mind that if it's a university, for example, the university has some of their students. They're certainly not paying the students, but as a part of participation and volunteering on campus, they participate in a telethon for the university. There, we're hoping that 90 cents on the dollar actually ends up, because the other 5 or 10% is for the logistics and the mechanical and the technical part of it. But I have to make that exception on telethons, because universities certainly are successful in annual giving, in calling and saying, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, you gave $100 last year. Would you like to repeat that gift? In that situation, I have no problem with, but in other telethons, be careful. Also, in the form of gifting, when we think about credit cards, a lot of nonprofits are saying, you can gift via your credit card. Well, think about 3 to 5% of that ends up going to the credit card processing, and the added cost of maybe 10 or 15%. So perhaps not just writing out a check, but on the internet having a check go by wire or bank-to-bank transfer. If we're going to use our technical benefits today, perhaps not using that credit card, but going the internet, direct bank. And a lot of people are paying their bills that way, and I think that's a good consideration. But beware of the cost, beware of diluting your gift, and get out your calculator, if you will. Something that caught my attention on cost, when we look at nonprofits, let me back up for a second. We have clients that are very, very concerned at year end, what's going to happen with the lame duck Congress, what's going to happen with the cliff, are we going to patch AMT, what about Medicare tax? We've got some other issues on estate tax. Where are we there? So people are becoming more conscious of the numbers, and they have their calculators out and saying, how does this impact me? Well, not that many years ago, but in the past, we just go along our willy-nilly way, and we just take for granted that, okay, this has happened. Today, people are more conscious and aware, and I think it's a byproduct, a natural byproduct of a recession. If we have the market impacting us in such a way, and we're more conscious that our nest egg is being reduced, we're conscious of cost, we're conscious of the numbers, so the byproduct of the numbers in that case are pretty obvious, I think. Let's talk about the tax for one brief minute, and I don't like to get into that area much, but some of you are familiar with the Laffer curve. I won't go in to any depth there, but here we're talking about how much can we tax and to what percent before we start to come off the curve on revenue, and this is a tax and revenue situation. Well, if we have no tax, then we have no revenue. If we have 100% tax, who's going to work? So in that case, it's self-defeating. So somewhere in between 0 tax and 100% tax. But the point here is the Laffer curve is where do we start to go off the end and receive less in revenue. And studies right now, and some economists are writing and getting, it's resonating in their field, that 33, 34% may be that point where the hump, as they call it, it starts to reduce the amount of revenue. Well, on a personal basis, where does that come in? And it comes back to the capacity that you and I have, that if I'm taxed more and more from different angles, how does that reflect and impact on my ability, my capacity to gift? And it does, I believe, and very dramatic. Nonprofits are very, very concerned about the cliff, because in that situation, there are billions of dollars at stake when the nonprofits can least afford it. Now, if we go to the UK as an example, in Great Britain here a few years ago, there was a big, very large tax increase. And I believe before Cameron came into the office, there was an increase of 50% tax. Well, at that time, they were looking at the wealthy and how many millionaires in Great Britain, and there were 16,000, and this was €1 million. Okay, so we're talking about $1.3 million in US dollars, but there's 16,000 before this tax was enacted. After the 50% tax came into play, the numbers of millionaires went from 16,000 down to 6,000. Now, that kind of reflects back on this Laffer curve that I was talking about. And we're in that same dilemma at the present time with respect to deficit, our debt, our need for more revenue, and our expenses. And it's a balancing act that we don't seem to be able to get our arms around. Let me talk about another publication that I end up reading every Saturday morning at Brookside Bagel. And I spend an hour and a half reading 3 or 4 papers, and Barron's magazine is one of them. And here on the cover, here a couple days ago, is the new Philanthropists. And it's really talking about young philanthropists. You can tell this young gentleman that he's young in age, but he's a genuine philanthropist. And a lot of the people in this article became multimillionaires in some respects from Microsoft, and they're up in the Washington and the Seattle area. And it's what they're doing. The point of this, I think, is that one, we have a younger generation who I believe is recognizing the need of the nonprofit sector. They have this inner feeling that they want to give back, they want to do good. And again, as we start off our program, you don't have to be a multi-millionaire to be a philanthropist, but this is generating more volunteerism, and you have young people in their 20s and 30s that are volunteering more now than the generation, their older brothers and sisters, just 10, 15, 20 years ago. And that figure, by the way, is staggering, the number of additional volunteer hours by young. But going back to this, it's interesting that the group in their 40s, there are 80,000, for example, there are 80,000 private foundations registered with IRS. Of that 80,000, 40% are controlled by 40-year-olds, 40 to 49-year-olds. Now, if we look at the corpus of those foundations, about 83 to 86 billion. And when we look at that figure, that 83, 85, 86 billion, that's more than the Gates Foundation and Ford Foundation combined. So the control by this younger group is one, growing dramatically in a very short period of time, but it reflects on the age and their recognition of the needs of the nonprofit sector. And if we recognize that and we look at the numbers and we go to our own calculators and say the last year in the stock market has been a good figure. This year, as we close out this year, will be a second year back to back, not as big as last year, but 2 years back to back where most are in the black compared to 2008 and pre, let's say at the end of 2007 and 2008. That is reflecting on their looking at their gifting. Do they increase their annual gifting? And again, as you're watching this is the last month of the year, and we're talking a lot about gifting, and we're reassessing our capacity. So I challenge you to do some number crunching, do the math, as our title is today, and see how big your calculator is. And while you're at it, the exception on that $15 per gift, I'll make the exception with Simsbury Community TV. They would appreciate your $25, your $50, your $100 gift, and I'd say that fits into your pocketbook and your calculator. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk a little bit more after the first of the year, and hopefully either we've kicked the can down the road a little bit, we've patched AMT, we've answered some of the questions on both sides of the aisle, and we'll reflect on going forward in 2013 and 14 as it relates to the numbers and your calculator. Thanks again. We'll see you next time. Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.